A nation is built or destroyed in the handover across generations. It will be built by a generation that will do more with what it was handed over from its predecessors. It will be destroyed by a generation that does less than it has taken over. To build a better country is possible by learning from the past generations, by making an effort with the current one, and by cultivating tomorrow's generation. The question is how. The book Generation Medemer attempts to answer this very question. Read it, discuss it, critique it.
ትውልድ በሶስት ጎራ ይከፈላል። እየሄደ ያለው እየጨረሰ ያለው ትውልድ አለ። አሁን ባለው አውድ ውስጥ የሚሰራ ኤግዚስት የሚያደርግ ትውልድ አለ። የሚመጣ ከኋላ ያለ ኢመርጅ የሚያደርግ ትውልድ አለ። የሄደው ኤግዚት ያደረገው ትውልድ ማለት ጎረቤት ሀገር የደረሰ የአባይ ውሃ ማለት ነው። ሰውም ይዞ ይሄድ፣ ግንድም ይዞ ይሄድ፣ አፈርም ይዞ ይሄድ፣ ከንፈር ከመምጠጥ ያለፈ ምንም ማድረግ አይቻልም። እንዴት አድርገን ሰውን፣ ዛፍን፣ አፈርን ይዞ እንዳይሄድ ማድረግ እንችላለን ከሚል ትምህርት ከመቅሰም ያለፈ መልሰን መጠቀም አንችልም። ሁለተኛው አሁን ያለው ትውልድ ማለት በህዳሴ ግድብ ውስጥ ያለ ውሃ ማለት ነው። በህዳሴ ግድብ ውስጥ ያለ ውሃ ሁለት መንገድ አለ። አንደኛው ተርባይኑን መጥቶ ኢነርጂ ፈጥሮ ተፈጥሯዊ ኮርሱን ተከትሎ እንዲሄድ ማድረግ ነው። ሁለተኛው ግን ተርባይን ለመምታት የሚያስችል ዝግጅትና ምናልባት መሻት ከሌለ ምንም ስራ ሳይሰራ ወደሚቀጥለው ሀገር እንዲጓዝ ማድረግ ነው። ይሄን የሚወስነው ማን ነው? ግድቡን ኦፕሬት የሚያደርግ ሰው በእጁ ስላለ ወይም ኃይል ያመነጭበታል ወይ እንዲሁ ያፈሰዋል።
እኛ የምናልም ያለምነውን የምንናገር ለተናገርነው ጉዳይ ቀን ከሌት የምንሰራ የሰራነውንም ፈጽመን የምናሳይ እንጂ እንዲሁ የምንቃዥ ሰዎች አይደለም። እኔ እንደማስበው አሁን በጀመርነው መንገድ ኢትዮጵያውያን ልባችን አንዳርገን 5 ዓመት ብንሰራ ኢትዮጵያን ኤድ ብለን የምንረዳበት ጊዜ ከፊታችን ቅርብ ነው። የመረዳት ታሪካችንን በመርዳት የምንቀይርበት ታሪካችን ቅርብ ነው።
ገና የሚመጣው ትውልድ ማለትስ ከምንጩ ከጣና ያልተነሳ የአባይ ውሃ ማለት ነው። በትክክል ከተዘራባችሁ እናንተም የተዘራባችሁን በትክክል ማብቀል ከቻላችሁ እንዲሁ ግንድና አፈር ይዞ የሚጓዝ ወንዝ ሳይሆን ለሀገሬው ለሕዝቡ ቁም ነገር ጠቀሜታ መስጠት የሚችል ወንዝ መሆን ትችላላችሁ። ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ጥቂትም ቢሆኑ ስመጥር ሰዎች ነበሩ። አክሊሉ ለማን፣ ሐኪም ወርቅነህ፣ ጸጋዬ ገብረመድህንን፣ ነጋ ድረስ ባይከዳኝን፣ ከበደ ሚካኤልን፣ ተክለሐዋርያትን ሆነው እነዚህን አባቶቻችን የመሰሉ ከነሱም የላቁ ሰዎች ከናንተ ውስጥ እንደሚወጡ ተስፋ ይደረጋል። ለኢትዮጵያ፣ ለአፍሪካ፣ ለዓለም ሁሉ የምትተርፉ ቅኖች፣ ደጋጎች፣ አስተዋዮች፣ በትህትና የተሞላችሁ ታላቅን የምታከብሩ መነሻችሁን የማትረሱ መሆን አለባችሁ።
የኛ ዓላማ ልጆቻችሁን ሀገር እንዳላቸው፣ ታሪክ እንዳላቸው፣ እያደገች ያለች ውብ ሀገር እንዳላቸው እንዲያውቁና ምናልባት ኢትዮጵያ ባጠረ ጊዜ ውስጥ ወደ ተሻለ ቁመና ስትደርስ እናንተን እንኳን ሙሉ በሙሉ ባናገኝ ልጆቻችሁን ግን ሙሉ በሙሉ ማስቀረት እንዲቻል እናሸንፋለን። የፈረሰውን እንገነባለን። ኢትዮጵያ ቅንጣት ነገር እንዳትጠራጠሩ፣ ልጆቻችን እቺኛዋን ኢትዮጵያ አይረከቡም። ነፃነቷን ጠብቃ አንድነቷን ጠብቃ የበለጸገች ኢትዮጵያን ለመፍጠር ከምንም በላይ ከኛ የሚጠበቀው አንድ መሆን ብቻ ነው።
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, On behalf of the Office of the Prime Minister, I would like to thank you for honoring our invitation and joining us this evening for the promotion event of Generation Medemer, a book about generations for generations. Let me begin by a quote from the book. Open quote. "The generation that will emerge along with the new Ethiopia will be one that will realize the country's dream and fulfill its long-sought wishes. Some of the key characteristics of the Medemer generation include a genuine desire to learn and know new things, a culture of deep discussion that is based on rationality and superiority of ideas, a lifestyle of respecting human dignity, and where a feeling of love for the country will be manifested through holistic patriotism." Close quote. This is an excerpt from Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's newest book, which, true to the principles of Medemer, looks backwards to forge a path forward. The book, written in Amharic, Afan Oromo, and English languages, was colorfully launched on Saturday, March 18th at Unity Park in the presence of more than 800 people, a majority of which were high school students, the current generation, who are custodians of the future Ethiopia. The Prime Minister, during his premiership, has penned two other books, Medemer and The Path of Medemer. The proceeds from the sales were all utilized towards constructing a total of 7 high schools throughout the country by way of projects managed through the Office of the First Lady. Through cultivating a culture of reading, the Medemer book series have also prioritized development projects. With the launch of Generation Medemer, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has already committed the proceeds of the book sales to various development projects in all regions. During the book launch ceremony, the Prime Minister has encouraged each regional president to sell the books and use the proceeds of the sales for constructions of various legacy and generation projects like mini stadiums, libraries, parks, and the renovation of natural and historic touristic sites. With an aspiration that spans generations and beckons the healing and prosperous development of Ethiopia, we ask you, our invited guests, to take an active part through your various institutional interventions towards cultivating Generation Medemer. This generation will take the nation and the continent to greater heights. We ask you to order the books in bulk. By doing so, you are placing your print in supporting development projects for the coming generation, and you are also enabling augmenting a reading culture. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and I thank you.
Excellency Ambassador Patukan, Your Excellency Dr. Noret, Excellency Ambassadors, Diplomatic Corps, invited guests, members of the 4 states, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be here with you today. It is an honor to cordially welcome you to the unique occasion of the launching ceremony of the latest book, Generation Medemer, for the diplomatic community, duly authored by His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed Ali, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Excellencies, as you are well aware, shouldering the responsibility of running the affairs of state of a country like Ethiopia is not an easy duty. But what is rather an uphill task is overcoming this daunting job of leading a nation facing many challenges and writing books at the same time. His Excellency, before assuming power, has written 5 books that dealt at length on a host of socio-political affairs of the nation. And after taking the mantle of leading the country, he managed to contribute 3 more books, namely Medemer, The Path of Medemer, and his latest Generation Medemer, which we are officially launching today for the diplomatic community. Excellencies, the Medemer concept can be loosely translated as synergy, which focuses on Ethiopia's tapestry of rich heritage while working in unison for its prosperous future. Medemer as a defining concept is a paradigm shift born on the part of reform. It is a new framework of political thought that provides a perspective about our past and insights into our future. The framework aims to heal our wounds, cure our ailments, and resolve our problems. The notion of Medemer is formulated within the context of the pressing quest for solution to the perennial problem we have encountered as a nation. Since the inception of his first book on the concept of Medemer a few years ago, Prime Minister Abiy has been championing love, hope, togetherness, reconciliation, forgiveness, and unity, which are essential milestones to building prosperous future for the younger generation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the book focuses on promoting national consensus through ensuring good governance, promoting peace and development. Above all, entrenching the importance of national dialogue and transnational justice for the country. Through his new book, Dr. Abiy urged the Medemer future generation to unite their efforts to build a stronger, prosperous, and united Ethiopia by drawing lessons from our past history. The book also aims at forging intergenerational linkage by debunking the erroneous perception and narratives. The author, in the foreword of his new books, says, quote, "The life I lived has been a path of Medemer that birthed Medemer itself," end of quotation. Cascading it to the future generation, His Excellency, the Prime Minister underscores the importance of unleashing the potential of the youth by instilling Medemer perspective and values within competing and destructive paradigms. As I conclude, I wish to take this opportunity to call on diplomatic community to promote this book in Addis Ababa and elsewhere, to buy as well as and read the Medemer Generation book. And I thank you very much.
Excellencies, ministers, ambassadors, members of the diplomatic and international society community, and invited guests. Now you have already bought the book, so I have only the assignment to convince you to read the book. Is that fair? So I feel very much honored actually to be here today to give a very brief, I'm not going to keep you here long, very brief review of this excellent book by His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. And I have read the book in and out, so everything I say is from my heart. So this is not a critique of the book. The book critique should happen once everybody reads it. But this is a kind of a bird's eye view, a very succinct review. First off, as the previous speakers, Excellencies said, this is the third book in 5 years or maybe less. So the Prime Minister is really a prolific writer, yeah? You can't write 3 books and do the job of a Prime Minister and, you know, knowing what we've been through in Ethiopia, so he's really a very good writer, not only good, but also prolific. So these 3 books are 1 in 3. The first book, Medemer, just Medemer, was the initial book which was written in 2019. Basically, the first book what it does is it explains his philosophy and the paradigm of what Medemer is. Unfortunately, when it came out only in 2 languages, local languages, Oromifa and Amharic. But I think it's almost done as far as the English translation is. So if you really want to know the philosophy, the paradigm, the thought of Medemer, this is the right book. So in 2 years' time, the second book came, again in the 2 major local languages, Amharic and Oromifa. But then, people were saying this is very philosophical, very theoretical, and for a lot of people it was not very easy to read because it's somehow academic in a way. So what the Prime Minister did was he injected his experience, his life journey, and he put his life in the book, from his childhood, his family, his political journey, and everything else. And he write this Medemer Mengad. Mengad means path. Basically, it tells of the principles and the practice of Medemer in one's life, especially the author's life. So if you really want to know, personalize the book, this is the right book. So then what is left is this current book, which is Generation Medemer. In this book, what he does is he challenged the idea of Medemer with the vertical diversity, I call it. Every diversity is horizontal. So, generation is, interlinked vertically. No 2 generations are similar. So with Medemer, Generation Medemer, what he does is he makes it humanized in a framework of generations. So this is about the people and personalities of Medemer. How does this thought relate with generations? As far as I know, some people ask, is Medemer ideology? And the Prime Minister, as far as I know, His Excellency, haven't committed to that. He said it's a thought. It's an idea. And he's building that idea from many aspects, whether it becomes an ideology or any of that kind, or it becomes a lifestyle, time will tell. But, he's not focused on that. He's just sharing his life on that. So I'm sure for the international community especially, the question is, what is Medemer itself? We know what generation is. What's this Medemer thing? I'm sure a lot of you have at least heard it, if not any time else tonight, this Medemer thing, and then you're asking, what is this? And His Excellency has said Medemer translates loosely into synergy, which is true. From the first book, and from spending a lot of time or enough time with His Excellency the Prime Minister and picking his mind, this Medemer idea, I would loosely translate it as synergy, but to link every meaning it carries, I would say alignment. With Medemer, you're not tightly bound with a strong bond, but you're aligned in many ways. So take this word, at least for tonight, alignment as Medemer, and the first would be synergy. Synergy has this embedded word energy. Every resource, every energy, when it's aligned like the ants, it's Medemer. Medemer aligns our energy, our resource, our money, our everything, our life. So this is alignment of energy, syn. The other is synchrony. Chronos is time. With time, there is a lot of meaning. So with Medemer, we align our time. It has a lot to do with generation because generation is time. When we align our time, it's Medemer because each one of us has time. Added up, synchronized, our time will have more than 1 + 1 if we synchronize our time. So it's a synchrony of time, ages. eras. The other is symmetry. Metry is space. So alignment and balance of space. I think there's a lot of fight regarding space. So if we apply the principles of Medemer on our space, it's more than enough for all of us. So alignment of space is one. The other is entropy. It's not very common. Entropy we know. With entropy is alignment of function. Like, for example, the common medical terminologies for ribs. We have many ribs, they align. That's entropy. Then I can breathe well. If one is broken, I can't because there is no entropy. Entropy comes in. So alignment of function is Medemer. Another one is symbiosis. Bio is life, so alignment of life. So this concept is not just one thing, but it has many meanings. So you can see this crocodile and the bird. What is the problem for the crocodile is a delicious food for the bird. But he has to open his mouth and then, if he eats one bird, nobody is going to clean his space. So symbiosis is interdependence of life, alignment of life. The other one is synopsis. Synopsis is perspective, view. How you conceptualize and summarize everything else. So our understanding, if it's aligned, then it's also called synopsis. So there's another one. The last one is system. This is a single nerve. We have about 30 billion cells in our brain. A single cell cannot think. But in a nervous system, our neurons can do a lot of things, including me speaking to you, you listening to me, and you buying the book, and everybody else is happy. So this is what Medemer is. So basically, this is the concept, and it still is a growing concept, as far as I know. So now, going back to the Generation Medemer book, the first thing the book tries to do is defining and delineating what generations are. Of course, from the word we know, generate means to bring forth one generation after another. So when people come, we call it they generate. And then when they go, another generation will generate. So that's what it is. So defining the book especially touches on this concept, which I think this is more a Western context. We have post-Second or First World War, we have defined different generations. Now we are at the generation Alpha. So the builders, the baby boomers, the X, the Y, the Z, the Alpha, and everything. So if you want to apply it here in Ethiopia or in your own respective countries, maybe it doesn't really fit, because what makes a generation is not just time, but shared experience. So we might have different experience here in Africa versus in Europe, Asia, or somewhere else. So this book tries to define the modern Ethiopian generations, while the generation passed before the Second World War is represented by that mountain, which is a lot of generations. The first generation it touches is the conservative, the patriotic generation that fought with at the occupation of Italy at that time around Second World War. That generation was nation-loving, patriotic, very conservative, who has laid the foundation for the modern Ethiopia in many ways. And then after that, their children became dreamers, and they removed the monarch. In revolutionary generation, they have done a lot of utopic initiatives, and then the revolution actually was not successful, so a lot of things happened, and their dream was not as successful as they thought. And then they are followed by the disillusioned generation, which saw everything the dreamers built crumbled in their eyes. The EPDRF came to power, Lenin fall, and then everything else happened. So that generation has taken a lot of time to find itself. Most of them are now exiled in many ways. After that, the smart generation came, which is somehow alienated. They are focused on themselves. They live in their own world. It's very difficult to engage them like the generations before. They are more global. They are exposed through the internet and everything else. So this generation is somehow very different. And now the book aspires to create a new generation called Generation Medemer, which loves the nation, the continent, and has a global humanity as well. So this Generation Medemer focus. And with Generation Medemer, it spends a whole chapter on the formula of how to build this new generation. And that key word for the formula is becoming. It's not the doing things, and it's not just, we are the being, but the becoming. By becoming, it means, for example, it takes an example of the ants. A single ant cannot do much, but when the army of ants come together, when they become the army, they can do more. And then it takes a lot of other examples. By becoming, it gives a hope for everyone. A generation, if we invest on it, it can become the being it is meant to be. But becoming cannot happen without applying the principles of Medemer. That's the book argues, and now leave the detail when you read the book. And then, eventually, if we're successful, what would make the Generation Medemer different? What are the characteristics and distinguished features? One is it would be a generation that loves art and beauty. It can connect with nature, with aesthetic values. That's one aspiration. Another is it's not emotionally impulsive, emotionally shallow, but it's a new generation that invests on its emotion, very empathetic generation, which can understand the other person well. And then trust as a social capital has been eroded from this country, because especially the past 50 years, it's not just this country, trust has been eroded in all over the globe. Now we're struggling with that. So this is one feature for this new generation. Another one is a pursuit of excellence. So much mediocrity, everywhere now. The new generation is aiming at this excellence and, of course, ethical integrity. These features are dreamed. So we are very intentional in building the new generation, the Generation Medemer. We're not going to leave the coming generation for chance. So becoming applies here. The generation is not this, but it can become this by applying the forces of Medemer, which are in the book. I'm not going to mention them. Building and bridging generations is one very interesting concept in the book. We build generations, but also we build. The book raises the intragenerational concept. One generation. Within the generation, we have to build and bridge, because a generation can fracture within. A single generation can have a fracture. So we have to work on the single generation. Then we have to do the intergenerational, because in every era there are, especially now, maybe 5-6 generations at a time. So we have to work with different generations at the same time. And the other interesting concept is transgenerationality. Basically, the same generation in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, we have to also apply the principle of Medemer, because eventually we are the citizens of the globe. Especially when you read the last chapter, it raises the issue of the Middle East in relation to Ethiopia, Africa, and the Horn. The relationship has been a very, love-hate relationship over the ages. We share religion, we share culture, we share geopolitical issues. So how can we? So transgenerationality is also a very interesting concept. And then I have to finish here before you get tired. Then I have to say a few words why you should read it. Because ideas are rising from the book that won't convince you. My personal belief is the principles are universal. They are not Ethiopian. They are universal. They apply to nature. The whole body system of our body works in that Principle. It's principle. Gravity is not for anybody. Electricity is not for a specific country or people. So this is an abstract principle. Basically, that's what it is. So you can read it. You can apply it to your nation. You can apply it to your institution. You can apply it to your generation, regardless of which generation you're from. Let me say one quote and finish with this quote. Medemer is the lens through which we see the future generation by pulling the capacity of the current, building on the strengths of the past generation, and correcting the mistakes of the previous. This is from the foreword by the author, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed. So, thanking you for your attention and time. I would invite you all to read the book. Thank you.